Welcome back, everyone, to the second session of the Research Networking Day here at CTM 2025. And all the task I have for this session is to introduce the module host, Matthias Pasdzierny, who is a professor of musicology at Berlin University of the Arts and Berlin-Brandenburg Academy of Sciences and Humanities. His research interests include the critical addition of tape music after 1945, the history of techno and electronic dance music, and the intersections of music with migration and exile. Matthias also wrote his PhD on post-Second World War music in West Germany. So, Matthias, over to you, and thank you so much for taking over the moderation of this session.
Yes. Thank you so much, Anita, for this introduction, and a warm welcome also from my side, of course, to this second module of the Research Lab. And I'm really looking forward to what's happening to us for the next 19 minutes. Resynthesizing the Traditional, it's a topic that reminds me a lot on current debates in ethnomusicology. Well, not so current, maybe ongoing since the last 20 years, more or less. You have a lot of re-vocabulary in ethnomusicology related to archives, for example, recirculating or restitution or restudy of traditional music. So in ethnomusicology, there's really like a proper research debate on that. So I'm very much looking forward to what we are going to see and hear now over the next three presentations. So that brings me to our first presenter, Dragoș Rusu. He is blending his roles as DJ, journalist, and cultural curator. He's a constant presence in Bucharest's underground music scene for quite a long time now. And he's also the founder of the Attack magazine, an online music platform, where he's also an editor-in-chief. And yeah, please, Dragoș, I would like to welcome you on the stage and to begin with the first presentation. Please.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be back at CTM and very exciting. Actually, last time I've been here, just a second to open the presentation, was in 2017 when I played a DJ set, and this is my first time as a speaker. I hope it will be fine. Okay, so in 2023, 1 year ago, I graduated a master program in anthropology at the Faculty of Sociology in Bucharest, and my research team, okay. Just a second. Anyway, my research team was focused on a very particular music instrument called Tulnic. This is actually a music instrument that is found usually on the Apuseni Mountains region in Transylvania. And I tried to analyze the social relationships in which the instrument is embedded. It actually, the team started in 2019 when I was invited to Europalia Festival. It's a festival in Belgium dealing with cultural diplomacy and cultural exchanges. And I was commissioned to form a music ensemble combining Romanian music and Belgium one. So from the Romanian part of the festival of the music ensemble was a mixed group of women that play this Tulnic instrument. And from the Belgium side was a producer named Milan W. 2 years or 3 years when after the project successfully ended, the project actually had two phases. First one was a residency. Me and Milan drove to Apuseni Mountains, and we stayed a few weeks there and recorded a lot of field recordings and we recorded a lot of field record. Oh. Woo, finally. Thanks a lot. Hey, there's 30 seconds from my time. So yeah, we stayed in this really nice village called Avramiancu in Apuseni Mountains, and we recorded a lot of Tulnic and tried to see the sonic capabilities of the instrument. And the second phase of the project was the production of 2 concerts in Belgium, which happened in the same year, in autumn. One was in Brussels and the other one was in Leuven. So 3 years after the project successfully ended, I remained with some questions, and I found this great opportunity of pursuing the master program at anthropology. And I said, hey, maybe that's a really nice theme that I should explore on my master thesis. So last year, 2 years ago actually, because yeah, we're 2025. I went again to do the field work, and I stayed for a couple of months in Apuseni Mountains and did a lot of interviews. Actually, I used the qualitative research methodology, like interviews, focus groups, and participant observation. I did a lot of field recordings, audio and photo elicitation. And yeah, I've also used, I've combined elements of material culture and cultural anthropology, as well as anthropology of sound. So I'll also read a few things from my thesis. As an object, the Tulnic possesses a life of its own, from its creation to its eventual decay, a kind of social life. Objects are not static and inert. They become alive when viewed through the relationship a person establishes with them. This relationship imbues an object with a biographical identity, one that is localized, particular, and individual. An object, while being an object, also becomes a subject or an entity through which the subject can represent themselves. So over time, I realized that there is this utilitarian journey of the Tulnic. It started first as a communication tool between locals, and later it became a musical instrument whose repertoire contributed to the Romanian folk landscape and the effervescence of nationalist spirit, and recently has reached the status of a craft object. A Romanian ethnographer called Aurora Pogani-Lie notes that the sounds of the Tulnic announced important events in village life: wedding invitations, gatherings for collective work, spinning sessions during the long winter evenings, and the herding of cattle to the mountain pastures at the beginning of summer. Women or girls would call their sweethearts in the evening through the Tulnic. When a cow got lost from its herd in the forest, it was called back with the Tulnic, as the animal could recognize the sound and would return to the shelter. Some specific things about the Tulnic: it's like 2.5 up to 3 meters long, and it has similarities with the Alpenhorn or Alpenhorn in Switzerland, and also some kind of similarities with the didgeridoo, which is maybe a little bit more known. And when I first discovered the instrument, these are some pictures from some workshops where that I visited, and I interviewed some craftsmen who produced the instrument. But unlike the Alpenhorn from Switzerland, Tulnic has no written composition or notations to establish its credential as a musical instrument. Its music has historically been preserved in oral traditions. So I first found about the Tulnic while I was doing the research for the Europalia project. I got rid of a compilation from the American ethnomusicologist Alan Lomax, who actually used some of the recordings from Constantin Brăiloiu, a Romanian ethnographer and musicologist. And he released that Smithsonian Folkways. He released a compilation like in the 50s or so with Romanian folk music and dances. And there is where I first discovered also some Tulnic songs. But this kind of archival work that I did needs a little bit of context, and as an American scholar named Anne Laura Stoller highlights, archives should not be viewed merely as repositories of knowledge, but as state monuments and sites of state ethnography that produce knowledge. She argues that what constitutes an archive, its form, and the classification and epistemological systems it signals at certain moments, represent and reflect critical features of colonial politics and state power. As we can see in this picture, it's probably somewhere from the 70s. It's a national gathering. It's from the communist period. Archives can be understood as technological markers of the late 19th century imperial power, as repositories of codified beliefs that demonstrated and bore witness to connections between secrecy, law, and power. Trying to see the origins of the Tulnic, I got to the concept of invented traditions of Eric Hobsbawm and Terence Ranger, because no one knows actually with certainty when, how, or for what purposes the songs, calls, or signals that make up the Tulnic repertoire emerged. They belong to the realm of the oral traditions and are attributed to a distant, imagined past that hovers in collective consciousness. So Hobsbawm and Ranger said that many traditions that appear or claim to be old are often quite recent in origin and sometimes consciously invented by identifiable historical actors. The tradition of woman playing the Tulnic was invented and entrenched in the collective consciousness of the community, taking this form through repetition. In a traditional society where gender roles are predetermined and imposed, and traditions must be respected simply because they are traditions, men gradually ceded the role of playing the Tulnic to woman. For woman, playing the Tulnic also has a therapeutic purpose, as it provides an escape from the daily worries. For men, playing the Tulnic may be seen as a sign of weakness or simply a waste of time. These are also pictures from the archives that I took while I was doing my fieldwork. So back to the project from Europalia that I examined in my research. I've noticed that, I was very, in the creative process, I was keeping very close contact with Milan W. in the composition. And we noticed this importance of technology that is being used to transform past traditions or invented traditions into new one. So technology, in a way, can be seen as a kind of bridge between traditional and contemporary, but also can be seen as a kind of line distancing the two of them. So, what are the implications of transforming invented traditions into performance arts, where those who produce and reproduce the arts, performance artists, musicians, or composers, are also agents of the transformation of these traditions? With the help of technology, can these invented traditions become experimental ones? These questions bring a series of risks and opportunities. The risk concern the perpetuation of certain colonial cultural practices, hegemonic power structures, and cultural appropriation, through which a central entity, in a position of power usually, accesses, borrows, and transforms certain cultural traits of a semi-peripheral entity to suit its interest. But since the center cannot really exist without the periphery, this risk can turn into opportunities when power dynamics are overturned through a process of translation and decentralization. It's a process like call and response in music. As you can see here, there are also some photos. I need one more minute, if possible, please. Some photos from the residency from 2019 with the girls and women playing the Tulnic and Milan W recording it. And on the right, it's a picture of the composition. Here you'll see on the right the kind of compositions or notes that Milan was doing at the time. This is a picture also from 2019 when we finished the residency. And this one is a picture from the concert in Belgium, in Brussels. It was in the cathedral at Le Brigitin, 2019, and we managed successfully to bring the group to Bucharest last autumn, and this is a picture from last year. So it was like 5 years after the first initial project that took place. If I am allowed 30 seconds to just play a little bit of only 30 seconds. Okay. So I guess this was it. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Dragoș. Please have a seat. I think we will, as you wish, maybe not so far away. Yeah, like there. Great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's good that we listened, and if it's only were like 30 seconds. One question that came immediately into my mind, you show several pictures, ensembles playing this instrument, more or less. Some of them in the open landscape, some of them in closed rooms. And I was asking myself how much of this instrument or this musical culture you showed us is related to this particular landscape and this like playing open air as a communication tool, and what happens to this kind of musical thinking when you put it in a concert space and in a closed room.
Somehow it's totally different, because usually the instrument was played out in nature, and the first concert in 2019 was also indoor in a cathedral, and the horns are like very loud, and they need very little amplification, and it's sounding a bit different because every space conditions the listener experience, and the space is filled with sound, and the sound circulates different when it's outdoor and indoor. So
Yeah, thank you. This also brings me to the question, you mentioned these Smithsonian recordings, the historical ones.
Yeah.
What role does these recordings play today? Are they known at all by the people playing these instruments today? Do they study them for knowing a repertoire that maybe is lost, or are they totally not interested in the historical recordings?
Well, they are from the 70s, or no, actually they are from 50s, and they were usually recorded by Romanian ethnomusicologists, and Alan Lomax didn't actually come to record the songs or the signals, and they have like kind of this historical importance in a way, because they can reflect like archival and important periods of historical period from Romania, and they are known like in Smithsonian Library. You can find them. Actually, this compilation that I got on was released by Ethnic Folkways, which is a sublabel of Smithsonian Folkways. but I think they are more like, I don't know, presentations made ethnomusicologically by different actors, and I don't know how usually they are like moments of folklore, Romanian folklore, but this is also, I don't know, it's a critical, they are not really analyzed critically, and they're like, okay, this is our folklore, and I don't know, just enjoy it or analyze it. But there are many other specific elements that were not like, I mean, the ethnographers and ethnomusicologists, when they were recording these folk songs, they had a lot of choices. They were coming from the government, they were sent by the government to record and to present and to archive, I don't know, a kind of folklore in order to construct national identity. I mean, I guess this was the main reason to create like a national identity. Hey, we are Romanians and this is our folklore and stuff like this. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I can imagine this context. Would be interesting then to know, then to dig in deeper to these recordings, how they did it technically. Maybe did they also record outside or inside? Maybe we can talk about that later in the bigger Q&A session.
Yeah.
For now, thank you so much, Dragoș, again for your presentation. And I think we already have to switch to the next one. Thank you. Yeah. So. Please have a seat again in the audience. We change to the next speaker that I'm happy to introduce to you. This is Nilufer Musaeva, sorry. Yes, coming from Hochschule für Künste in Bremen. And she's also merging several roles. In this case, it's the role of multimedia artist, designer, and researcher. Coming from the background in interface and graphic design, she's dedicated to exploring ways to apply her skills outside of profit-driven contexts, focusing on more meaningful, socially conscious uses of design. I think this is also what this project is going to be about, or what you're talking to us. And humor is also playing a big role in her work. I really recommend to you to visit her project. These URLs will serve the IRL. I digged into this because for me it was particularly interesting because it's on websites of Hochschule für Künste in Germany, like art high schools in Germany, and how these websites maybe work functional or dysfunctional. So really, really interesting thing to explore. So I don't want to talk anymore. Please, Nilufer, the mic is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, a sip of water. So, today I would like to talk about my project called Homecoming, but the title I use now is just the name of the village that I'm exploring. I think it's important to talk about my background a little bit. I'm a graphic design. I have a graphic design and arts background, and through time, design became a really bullshit job. You just need to move pixel around 1 millimeter up, down, and it's just like, what's the point of existence at this moment? I asked myself. I was very frustrated with accessibility of German art schools and especially their digital presence during COVID. So, as Matthias already mentioned, I have made a project about this. That was my first time involving myself in a quite grotesque multimedia project. But I decided, okay, that's not enough. Let's make our life even more complicated and work with a little bit sensitive topics within myself. Usually I don't involve too much in emotional works, but this is perhaps the most emotional thing that I have done so far. This is a village of Tulnic. It's a topic of my project, and also my collaborators come from there. On this map you can see that here you can see some Cyrillic names. It's located on a border of Azerbaijan with Dagestan, part of southern Russia. Tulnic is here in the bottom. For many thousand years, it has been isolated from basically everything and everywhere, located 2,500 meters up the mountains. It has its own distinctive language that is forming a separate branch in the language trees. And at the same time, just recently, it became more accessible to others through the road that was built there in 2006. And that made tourism quite a thing in Tulnic, so more and more people come there, and archaeological excavations are happening in the like late 10 years or something like this, and they discover more and more interesting things there. So what about me and Hnalik? Why do I make this project? The truth is that my grandfather was from there, and he was supposed to get married when he was 15, but he decided, okay, actually, don't want to do this, and he ran away from the village. And then further in life, my dad moved countries, and now I also moved the country, so triple migration happened, and we just decided to discover this place with my dad during our holidays. And I had this very intense design crisis during that time. And I just went to this village with my dad, and turns out that they have 3 different museums. 2 of them are like self-governed, and people are making their very refreshing collection of objects, not white box, no explications, just pure as is. And the storytelling is actually the thing that supports these objects. I was just astonished by my heritage being actually somehow linked to what is my interest nowadays. And I decided, okay, no matter what, I will involve in this project, although it will bring me a lot of maybe psychological discomfort, because the issues of migration and roots and like acceptance in society, of course, it's very important notions of my life that I usually tend to ignore, but not this time. So let's talk about a little bit of material heritage in Hnalik. Here you can see some religious manuscripts that were hidden between the walls of some of the houses there, because Soviets came to this village around like 20s or 30s of the 20th century, and they were obviously against religion. Many people of this village for whom religion was the only like reason to actually learn how to write, they hid their material heritage between the walls, or like tried to not make it destroyed. And generally the archive in Hnalik has been destroyed over 3 or 4 times. With every changing government, they would just burn out or burn the other archive. So this is so far like the only older manuscripts that you can find. And many people from Hnalik, they would go down the mountain and go maybe to Mecca or to some other places like in Dagestan to exchange this religious knowledge. So what we did in this project with my dad, we tried to reconstruct the family tree. And for that, my dad like remembered some names that his dad told him. It was like very vague, and then we went to the National Archive in Baku, Azerbaijan, and saw some sort of censuses like this for like 400 pages or something like this. And this census has been made by the imperial power of Russia to draft men to war. But thanks to the census, I was able to trace down the ancestry all the way to the 8th generation, the beginning of 19th century. In my future project installation, I will use this horn of a mountain goat that we didn't kill. And I engraved the names of my ancestors on this horn, and each year of the goat life symbolizes each generation of my family. Then I have dealt a little bit with the personal archives of Hnalik residents and tried to see how the life was through their eyes in the past. And it's just like very beautiful pictures by themselves, and they depict this like sweet life. So I was really astonished by this, so I displayed it in this small audio-visual box. Visual olfactory box. So you can just stick your face inside, smell these plants from the village, and look at this little presentation. Another thing that I did is we stayed at the house of like a widow and her family, and her husband tragically died. He fell off the cliff, but he left behind some diaries where he was exploring the areas, and he was aware about these archaeological findings in the village. So he wrote a bunch of manuscripts, and these manuscripts have been, it wasn't possible for the family to read it because Azerbaijan has went through 3 or 4 script changes just in the 20th century. So sometimes the kids are not able to read what their parents wrote. So together with my family, we involved in this translation of his manuscript and made this kind of sentimental book, an archive inside of an archive. Here outside you can see the book that is written in the local Hnalik language that I don't understand, but these little leaf traces are my intervention in the book. And those things depict archaeological findings that were found in the village, and I laser cut them through this very tangible, destroyable media of fallen leaf. Of course, we should talk about archaeological findings because this is just unbelievable how many things are being found there with each passing year, because the burials are like many layered. So in each new layer you can find a culture that's older and older than the previous one. And here is pictures of a home museum of just a hunter who was hunting around the mountains, and he found a bunch of very, very interesting artifacts, and he has a lot of stories about them. So I thought, okay, now that this village is gaining success slowly but surely, most probably we need to do something with it and preserve this storytelling and avoid putting the museum into the white cube. So the idea was to create 3D through photogrammetry and then display it on an archival website that collects these materials and also personal audio stories related to that. For interfaces for digital archive has been made with my great collaborator, Alexandra Voronina. Thank you so much for this. Another thing that I was trying to develop, and still am, I'm pretty much inside of this project now, I'm working on it right now, is to kind of develop the publishing or like support the existing publishing by my design expertise. Here we made a monograph about the village that kind of covers all the topics that are there in the village, like flora, fauna, or like economic activity, tales of the village. This has been already produced 300 copies in Azerbaijan and is accessible as like a tourist souvenir or general info in the village. Another thing I did is a book about Khanalic language. I'm not a linguist, so it's not really my expertise, but it was important for me to highlight how important it is to have fonts that support endangered and small languages, but you can't really talk about the fonts without talking about the language. So I cut out a lot of little quotes from different linguistic expertises and collected it in those books. And another thing we're doing is this alphabet poster for kids, and another dear friend and illustrator is helping me in this matter. Overall, I must say this project wouldn't be possible with like great collaboration of friends of mine. And I'm still pretty much inside of this project, but I would like to read for the end a personal text about my relation to it. I know the time is a little bit running, but I'll go for it. Sip of water. I often ask myself, who am I? What do I look like? Do I accept myself for who I am? These questions usually brought back some gray noise that I preferred to ignore, go to sleep, listen to music, or simply doom scroll. Like a kaleidoscope, multiple identities and physical and mental wanderings silently echo somewhere deep inside and subtly leave. There has always been an aim, to rush from one place, an achievement to another, iron my shirts, polish my shoes and grades, perpetually move through days, milestones and deadlines, survive neuroses, bitterly joke back to offensive commentaries, walk forward and never stop to reflect and hear the echoes. Walking forward brought me away from where my father is, and my father's walking brought him further from his dad. My grandfather was the first one who changed his ancestor way of moving through life, from a circle to an arrow. He ran down the mountain and chose education over marriage. So did my father, so did I. I am Nilufer, but I used to stop people from calling me by my full name. My parents are from Azerbaijan, but I hid this part of myself. My grandparents come from 2 mountainous villages and speak 4 languages, but I never understood why, and asked. Only now, when I take part in seminars on non-Western philosophies and read about decolonization, I start to connect, approve, and research my culture. I was ashamed of who I was before, and now I'm ashamed of being ashamed. Until the project came to an end, I was hiding and not confronting this motivation. But here's the truth. I feel many emotions about this. Thank you for listening to this. Once my dad and I went to Khanalic without expecting anything. Suddenly it all made sense to me. Circular life motion, moving between summer and winter pastures, counting years by sheep, 2,000 sheep one year, 5,000 next one, living on top of each other's house, where your backyard is someone else's rooftop. The hidden echoes transform into a sudden, overwhelming feeling of belonging. This project unravels the unspeakable and the indescribable. It's a gentle museum of collected, reflected, and created matters. Thank you for all my collaborators. Thank you for my dear collaborators from this village with whom we've worked a lot on the future outcomes. Sounds like I'm crying. I'm just really excited about this project and to present it in front of this big audience. I'm very glad for the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nilufer. If you mind, maybe one or two questions. Yes. Yeah.
It doesn't work. Or, yeah. Okay.
I think it works. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing this. Actually, what comes first to my mind, I imagine like starting this kind of research. I imagine it's a small village. Like how many people?
It's only 2,000 people who live there, and the number never changes because the kids go away, and it's more than one kid who is being born in a family.
So everyone knows everyone, I guess.
Yes, exactly. That's the part that I didn't really cover, that when we entered the village and we said our surnames, we said the names of the grandparents, suddenly people were pointing fingers at each other, oh, this guy is this relative, and that, and then like they never considered me as a guest anymore. I was part of their culture and community. Yeah. And I was treated like equally, not more than, not less. Yeah.
So I'm asking myself, when someone like you starting a research like this, doesn't it get then immediately like to a participatory research and everyone is involved in starting to do research on their own in the village? Did you recognize something like that?
The thing is, it's important to notice that my project is not some sort of like lifesaver or something like this. They are doing pretty well, and there are smart people out there, and they have this and that resources also from the government, who is surprisingly, for some reason, interested in preserving the indigenous culture. So they nevertheless continue involving in preservation of their language or heritage or whatnot. So mostly we discuss some outcomes of our projects, like what sort of mediums will we use, like if, for example, we want to make this monography about the village to educate people, or we want to create postcards and stamps, so people can send something from the village via post. And then from their side, it's mostly kind of tackling the bureaucracy and actually just trusting, because it's not easy to trust someone who came from God knows where and said, oh, by the way, I know it all, so I'm going to help you. So in fact, first they were like, actually, what the hell? What's your motivation? And then you need to open up to everyone. Or, for example, with the archaeological findings, it wasn't easy to convince them at first that actually I'm not trying to counterfeit it or make some sort of fuckery with it. But in fact, then when I explained what I mean, and when I actually pointed out that the way they're doing this museums now is actually very valuable and it's kind of fragile, then suddenly everyone is willing to cooperate. And whenever my collaborators came to the village to document or video work, they would come and ask, oh, by the way, we have this kind of task. Can you take pictures of this guy, or can you contribute here and there? So they're organically fitted in this project. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And another question of mine would be, you showed us some of the presentation of this museum, or also what you collected. Is there also a sonic dimension? You mentioned that this language is a very small language group of speakers, and I don't know, is it already endangered in a way? That would be an interesting question. If there's also a dimension in this kind of exhibition to make this language listenable and explorable in a sonic way.
So that's actually the part that is kind of semi-covered, because the only reason people would come to the village back in the days when the road was very complicated is to research the language, because it was falling under the Soviet kind of expertise, and they like to flex that, oh, we have this Caucasus and there are so many languages, so we're going to make some research. And 10 years ago, researcher from Frankfurt University collaborated with some local researcher, and they created a thing that's called DOBES, which is a closed library with a lot of recorded heritage. This library is accessible nowadays. You need to kind of prove that your academic background, and then you can reach it out. So thanks God, I didn't need to be a savior of all fronts or something like this. I could just do something in the visual field and not be a saver at all. I think they saved me more than I do them, because I reconnect. The project is called Homecoming. So in that way, I'm a little bit drifting away from the question, but what I'm trying to say that this part is semi-covered, and it's not really endangered, this language, or maybe it is, but there are more and more materials, and like kids learn it in school, and there's already a course book. Like somehow it's not so doomed, this situation, which makes it better for me to work on this project without this feeling of desperation. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is, this kind of idea like of salvaging some kind of culture is a very problematic approach anyway. So definitely, yeah. Thank you so much, Nilufer. I would love to talk more, but we have more time later in the big Q&A session. Thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Yes, and we come to the third speaker and last speaker already of this module, Shri Rama Murthy from Hyderabad in India. And he's one of the, yes, exactly. Give a warm welcome, please. And he's one of the, let's say the founding figures of electronic music in India, a sound artist, ethnomusicologist, DJ, producer, radio show host. So you also see a lot of roles here on the stage. And one of the initiators of electronic music culture in India in general. So please, Shri, the microphone is all yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you everybody for gathering here today. And it's a great opportunity to sort of represent a bunch of studios that work together back home in India, where we are working in video games. We are commercial studios, but we have grown up in families with the artist backgrounds. Like my mother was a Indian classical musician, but not professionally, but out of interest, and it's a very familiar lineage thing back home to have music being transferred from one generation to another. It's a great privilege to be here and share some of the facets of what we are doing currently in our work life and how we are trying to propagate, resynthesize where we came from. As everybody else, I grew up in a very fast-moving 90s in India, in south of India specifically. My father served the Indian Army, so had the great opportunity to travel around different parts of the country. We are a multitude of cultures in a huge place. So every 300 kilometers, the food, the music, a lot of things change, and was unknowingly absorbing a lot of things like that in the surrogate. Thanks to the opportunity of my father's transfers around that. Today's topic, I'm just going to quickly run through a bunch of things as a couple of studios that me and my partners back home, Avinash Kumar, who's a designer by profession, and also my partner, and he takes care of the visual part of our project, and Mrs. Jayalakshmi Ishwar, who's a Bharatanatyam dancer and a teacher for the last 45 years, and also bestowed with one of the highest civilian awards back home called the Sangeet Natak Academy Award winner, and she's been running a successful classical dance music school in Delhi for many, many years with students from across the world. Today I'm just quickly gonna, in the given 10 minutes and in the interest of time, I'm gonna compress everything real fast and move forward to what we do as studios. We both, me and Avinash, grew up in a 90s setting in India where everything was fast moving. We were looking around at the West for a lot of our inspiration, not just music, art, fashion, everything else, because everything foreign was very interesting for us. We had the colonial amnesia of 200 years of being under British rule, where everything was prescribed for us, the way of life, the way we drove, the way we sort of presented ourselves. Also, like many times, English was one of the languages that was even advocated by your family, your parents, to be very well versed with, even though we had our own beautiful languages, which I would say dated much before English and other languages, other Anglican languages. Okay, so quickly I would go into some of the stuff that we are doing currently. We are a studio which makes video games, independent video games. 8 years back, we got a grant from the Epic Games, and we used that grant to do a bit of research. We found that the lack of representation of Indian real lores in the video games. We played video games, but things like Unreal, video games like Fortnite on wherever, there were many Indian references, but nobody actually ever took the pain to go to India or do a little field trip or engage with some of the local practitioners or researchers. It sort of gave us an idea that when we are making our game, we should be totally representing our cultural values, its custodians, its practices in its real essence and its true form. That kind of led us to develop a few characters, which are, if you look at the screen, you will see some characters there. The protagonist is a cyborg in the future called Meenakshi, and it's a fictitious character. And unlike the Western dystopian tropes, where dystopia is obviously mostly marked by death, rage, and fights, and evil versus good. Our dystopia is more of a hopeful future, where we, in our stories, talk about a post-dystopian world where life is more hopeful, where we are trying to rebuild societies on values like barter, egalitarian societies where people work with each other and rebuild these societies. I'm going to quickly grab some water. One of the important aspects for us in the music side of the project is what is the standard tuning. To my knowledge, the standard tuning, I studied Indian classical music as introduction to pitches and rhythm from home, nothing too formal. I was more interested in Led Zeppelin because I started watching the cable TV then, and there was more Led Zeppelin or Doors or Tulls. Those are the things I was interested in than my parents. They always had classical music on the turntable, or film music, or traditional local music or folk music. I found a stark difference in the 1935s or sometime. The European countries got together and they said that let's have a concert tuning pitch, because none of these fifths and fourths were, working between instruments, and sit down concerto in a hall where people were like tuning instruments to play them together. It wasn't working. So in around 80, they decided that A440 is the standard tuning pitch and everybody should tune to that. Rightfully so. I'm not negating that, but I'm also saying that there's a predated tuning system which is pretty much close to the tuning that is occurring in nature. We call them swaras, which are nothing but articulation of vowels, and they're the tuning in our much more predated systems are around 432, and nothing is a very fixed system. We don't have a fixed do as well. Our do is movable. Wherever you start, it starts from there, and it's relative from there, and you build your fifths and thirds, and so to speak, those kind of like degrees of scale, if you speak about it in a Western music sense. I don't want to talk too much of music jargon, not knowing that, if all of you are practitioners of music. So I will quickly say that this is the solfege that derives, thousands of years ago, which comes from sounds of the nature. The relativity also comes from, the do or the sa comes from a cry of a peacock. The re comes from lowing of a bull. The re is in the South Indian tradition, and then the North Indian tradition, it is the re. And we have like 3 different degrees. And for example, if I said in a C scale, if D is the second degree, we have 3 different places for the second degree, and it's also pretty close to the third degree, and it's interrelativity because we think about music as a microtonal system, not as a perfectly aligned system, because nothing in nature occurs that perfect. That's the philosophy behind. So microtonality, Indian classical music, and also in Western music, which is something that you see a lot. I see a lot of jazz musicians. I love jazz music, even though I didn't grow up with that kind of music, but I really love jazz music because I feel like also metal music, I think, which comes very close to Indian, especially South Indian classical music. Bands like Tool, I really love the rhythmic inflections that they have, and it's something very close to the Indian music. And microtonality is also something that a lot of people are experimenting worldwide, and which is a beautiful place between the notes. And it is very appealing to us because we are always so used to listening to the perfect fifth. And, it's just so relaxing. I'm not saying it shouldn't be relaxing, but it's just so resolving, so to speak. But there is a whole lot of music in between those notes. And if you negate this sort of approach, very perfect approach, then there is a lot of beautiful, tone, timbre, and experience to be explored. There are in any music system, Indian music system has scales, we call them a set of notes. Scales are not exactly ragas, but if you had to put it on a piece of notation, then it would be, I can still call it scale for ease, but ragas are more a set of notes which have a certain repertoire of presentation, and the presentation precedes the notes. Yes, the notes are definitely the constricting part of it, but the presentation and how you approach a certain raga is what makes the essence of that raga. Our music is also not just sung in any sort of non-contextual manner. Predominantly the music style that I'm talking about is the Carnatic music, which is the music which is based on South Indian tradition, where moods are based on part of the day, and oftentimes concerts are also based on which part of the day you are performing this. So different scales for different time. In the interest of time, I will not play these tunes, but I think I'm gonna leave a SoundCloud link or some of the other stuff that one can access on a website. On our website, I'll leave during the whole project, we have come across a lot of different kind of opportunities to work with field recordings and work with underprivileged, marginalized, communities of music. Thanks to some of the grants with the Epic Mega grants or the UK India Together grant, we were able to reach out to these different communities and sort of create a circular economy where people who are actually propagators of this traditional oral traditions of music could be benefited post-pandemic, especially because things were very grim back home. I think in the interest of time, I'll leave this QR code for everybody to go through our project. It's a whole lot of things that we are trying to do as an independent studio with a little help from the other institutions and a whole lot of collaborators, more than 60 around in India. And I'd like to thank everybody and also the custodians of the real art form and the gurus. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sri. Please have a seat. Yes, and I think we will have time for one or two questions. I will begin, sorry for that, I will begin for a musicologist with a musicologist question. We ended up in the end with the question of electronic music connected to all what you're talking to us or showing to us. I would be interested in what's the history of electronic music in India. Can you say a few words when this music started there? As I to imagine, as you mentioned, colonial times, there was a branch of a recording company already in the 1920s in India. I read about that, but is there a certain studio already when I stopped. When did this story start in India?
Well, thank you. Test.
I think it works.
Okay.
It works, yeah.
Okay, so electronic music culture is about 30 years old in India. I've been very fortunate to be part of this whole disco revolution and from a very nascent time, just by the interest of looking at the MTV grinds and the other international IPs which were propagating dance music, the great dance music coming from the dance floors of USA, or the avant-garde stuff that was coming from England or from Europe. So the music scene in India has been super at a very fast pace, evolving. There's a huge electronic music community back home. We have more than 40 plus festivals back home, and on the side I also DJ through an agency on the weekends in nightclubs. There are many nightclubs in smaller towns apart from the bigger metros. The music scene sort of grew itself with like looking westwards for an alternate weekend, revelry, but it also has sort of shaped over the years where people are representing their culture, representing their sound, and it was a taboo to like sort of listen to regional music in clubs, but now there are like boots and reworks and dubs and mashups and all kinds of things which are being made and popularized by many artists. So I think the history is around 30 years old, nothing more than that.
And is there also like an academic tradition or a tradition of academic electronic music?
Yes, there is a lot of academic tradition as well now. I think in the last 20 years, the youth has sort of embraced global cultures, well-traveled, and also have started to, practice their music outside their rigid classical art forms and started to explore it at a personal level. 20 years back, usually Indian kids would grow up to get a proper job. Music is still not considered as a proper job. Even my family asked me for a very long time when will I get a real job? So music is never considered as a very secure job. Anything with benefits is a secure job.
Yeah, I mean this is in many societies the case, I think. And my last question before we open up for the bigger Q&A session again, I would be interested also in how is knowledge passed. Like what's the kind of education of musical knowledge also in this connection of traditional music in India that you were talking about, but also in connection with electronic music. I'm always very interested in how this kind of knowledge is passed in the beginning, like 30 years ago, but now, of course, we know a lot is happening in tutorials online, but how can I imagine how this knowledge passing started and what was important for that?
All right, this is a very interesting question because our tradition of passing knowledge is oral. We never had books for a very long time. Now there are publications which are making books. There are YouTube tutorials. A lot of artists are putting out their knowledge, intricacies of practices and what are the do's and don'ts. What's the right way to approach your instrument? And earlier it used to be always a guru. You'll go to a guru's class. You'll be under his or her tutelage for maybe 10, 15, 20 years. Sit a level lower than where they are sitting, and always there's a lot of devotion involved in the music, and it was never a commercial thing as well. Like the fees was barely like 15 rupees or 20 rupees a month, which is like not even a euro, less than half of a euro maybe, not even half of a euro, quarter of a euro, I think. Yeah, so oral traditions are basically what it started from, but with the advent of technology, we are also IT in tech capital, and we are like super fast moving. We are really, trying to be out there in technological world. So there is a whole lot of information that musicians can benefit from, and independent practitioners can benefit from. I'm one of them. I resort to YouTube, Google, and a lot of places when I don't know areas, because I also conduct, concerts with like an ensemble of 60 people, most of them better musicians than me, and also like doing their instrument for many years, whereas it's a nice time to be able to absorb that knowledge without having a guru. For example, I didn't do a concert violin in Indian classical, and if I had to write a piece, or if I had to write a section for a Carnatic violinist, I can't write all of that on MIDI or piano, because there's a whole lot of other world that is involved. So yes, oral traditions, I strongly also advocate for it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would now like to ask to come to the stage again, Dragoș and Nilufer, because, thank you so much. Yes, I think we really had a great module so far, and now we have a little time to talk all together to each other, and then also, of course, to open up for you and for questions from the audience, from the public. Yeah, I have to say, when I was asked to be the host for today, I was asking myself, resynthesizing the traditional. What traditional does mean? What does it mean at all in our days? Actually, coming from Germany and Western Germany, to add the word traditional, for example, traditional music for me was very problematic right from the start. Where I come from, there was no traditional music in Germany anymore. No one was practicing that anymore. It didn't exist, and when it existed, it was kind of awkward. So I'm asking myself, all the three of you showed very different approaches how to deal with this term of traditions or traditional. And I would ask you all the three again, what was for you, what was the purpose or the usage of this kind of, I even don't know how to, what element I should call it. So was it for you something like to provoke yourself, or was it really some kind of, I don't know, content, or how did you tackle this word, traditional? Did you tackle it at all? That would be also a question, of course. So I don't know who wants to start. Maybe Nilufer, you are moving already. So
yeah, I'm always moving, so that's nothing new. I'd like to say maybe like for a long time in my life, tradition was kind of against me because I didn't really fit in this traditional kind of value of finish university, get married, or like have long hair or whatever. Of course, I have respect for tradition. I used to be a very loud person against all those things. So for me, encountering the traditional and kind of preserved heritage was like, my intention was not because I super loved the traditional or something, but rather because the methodology they used was very close to the things that I achieved, like approached naturally, which was like decentralized and like non-Western types of museology and knowledge preservation. So somehow collaboration with this village feels very contemporary in a way that like they didn't read all this crazy books, but like they were like at the right place all this time, you know. So for me, like I went this long way through overcoming a lot of burdens of like society, and in the end kind of ended up at the similar level with them. So good for me, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Dragoș, maybe.
Yeah. Well, traditional, like it's always like it's somehow always tied to a past, which is usually a distant past. It's a moment in history that you can't really pinpoint. And I was really, when I was doing the research for my master thesis, and I discovered this concept of invented traditions. It's actually of Eric Hobsbawm and Terence Renger. It actually made a lot of sense because when we talk about traditions, there are actually many of them, or some of them, who really claim to be old. They are not that old, and usually they are made for construction of national identity, and it's like the foundation of nationalisms. And nationalisms we see, at least in Europe, like it appeared like, I don't know, 2 centuries ago. So even when they refer to like distant past, actually, I don't know, it's not that distant, and they were made like for like specific purposes, and by identifiable actors usually. So I would say tradition is is a thing that you can't get rid of, but there is a little bit of how to say, a kind of a little difference between traditions and customs, because traditions are made through repetitions, and usually there is like a historical figure that always appears somehow from the sky, or and customs, they resist this kind of No, anyways, customs are not, they can be linked to innovation, and this would be a kind of difference between traditions and customs.
Thank you. Yes. Shri, you want to add something to this?
All right. I think in our practice, tradition and customs are sort of a plethora of knowledge that was, because of, I think, colonial amnesia, most of us never sort of embraced it. But if you introspect and if you look deep into it, there is a huge knowledge bank of, with respect to just music itself. And there are many other art forms that I can talk about. But with respect to music, there's so much richness, complexity, and technique, and you can definitely benefit a lot out of it. And back home, it's also like something that is, if not dying, diminishing because of the way we are absorbing everything outside our periphery, to prove that we are we are there, we're representing ourselves. So in our projects, it's a conscious choice to work with traditional folk and other, practitioners, so that these practitioners also stay, in the scene, doing what they do, and propagate this knowledge to younger people, and also inspire these people, to take up these kind of music forms. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, for me, it would be also interesting to know from you what you think about this. Yeah, let's say how tradition and technology are what kind of relationship they have with each other. I'm asking because, for example, a good friend of mine, she's the director here in Bern of the Center for Endangered Languages in the archive, Mandana Saifedinipur. She told me that she's approached now by all the big tech companies, like every month, like is it Google, is it Meta, to use their data as training models for training AI with all these kind of, because right now all the AI models we have, they are only working with a very, very limited scale of languages, and they will, of course, they have their target groups all over the world, and they want to expand their market, so they are interested in this kind of traditional knowledge to exploit the technology and to incorporate into cyber capitalism. The same goes, of course, with social media platforms. Now you have TikTok channels showing you traditions from very small villages somewhere in some area that you didn't know existed before 5 years ago. So what do you think about this kind of paradox or dilemmata of this situation we have today?
I guess change is the nature of life. There can be a discourse around whether it is desirable or undesirable, but sadly the bus has left the station, and if you don't involve yourself, I look at it as, from my practice, if I don't populate that space with my traditional music or my traditional data, I'll be left behind. But also with reference to AI and other newer technologies, they're on your WhatsApp, they're on everything else, in Amazon, wherever you go, it's all there. I mean, it's good to harness that and be able to use it and keep your artistry together as well. I recently saw an exhibition at the Serpentine in the UK, where it was very beautifully put together, an audiovisual installation where AI was used, but also the AI is operated, mitigated, and governed by a human. As long as the human is on the top, empathy is there. There is obviously good news, but it's a very large discourse. But in my understanding, I feel that it's better to adapt to it, catch up with it, use it to your betterment, but also have some ethics around how you use it and how you don't use it.
Have AI wash my dishes and I can do the research myself. That's my stance on this. I think, of course, many technologies has made it easier to preserve. But okay, if meteorite falls on your server, that's it. All your years of your research are gone. That's why I also advocate for using decentralized technologies for storing such precious archives. And it's also a political thing, like the archive or the existence of any culture, heritage. So if you have it in a database, it can just deteriorate so fast, as the archives used to burn in the village. Now you can just shut down some server and that's it, it's gone. yeah, I think there should be always an ethical supervisor to any sort of project like this that is somehow is bridging the community and maybe some technologists and specialists. And like, it's very sensitive matters. I feel like if someone like arrogant enough goes and tries to work with this heritage, it could be also misinterpreted. I don't know how dangerous are the outcomes of this, but yeah, I need to always be thoughtful about this. And maybe also ask the community, what do they think? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Dragoș?
I would say that technology exists since, I don't know, since ancient times. I mean, humanity has used technology even since the hunter-gatherer level of societies, and they were creating tools, and there were still different kind of technological means, but humanity has made use of technology since always. So in a way, I would say that you can use technology to produce or reproduce different kind of traditions and I don't know, to put in practice and disseminate different kind of traditions through technology. So they are somehow linked in a way, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you all the three for this discussion so far. And now it's already time to open up for questions from the public. So, oh, this is fast. We have already one here.
Yeah, I've got a question for you actually, and regarding the Tulnic, because I also noticed that, you know, it's not the only instrument of its kind, and for example in Slovakia there's also a similar thing called trombita. So I wanted to ask about this, and if you also studied maybe other countries and similar instruments around.
I saw. I've noticed in Switzerland is the alpenhorn or alpenhorn somehow, and there are also similarities with the didgeridoo from Asia, and usually I suppose like many countries have these kinds of instruments which were initially used as tools of communication, like these long horns, and any kind of instrument from this larger family of long horns probably has specific and unique sounds and some very special and unique acoustic properties. So I didn't know about the Slovakian trombita. Yeah. So probably in many countries, at least in Europe, I can say for the whole world, but at least in Europe, there are of course many similarities. For example, on Tulnic, there are no organological studies, as I found on the Swiss alpenhorn. So we can't really tell for sure, like in terms of ethnomusicologically, what are the music scales and harmonies that this instrument can produce, because usually it was captured by this discourse, nationalistic discourse, and it didn't. I mean, I don't know. The instrument didn't have, or it still doesn't have, like this kinds of ground for a music instrument. But it's always related to oral traditions, and So this is what we actually try to do. Like we try to find how many harmonies and what kind of notes can be played on this instrument. And for example, the woman that we collaborated with from the ensemble, they don't have any musical knowledge, but we kind of, at some points where we were doing the residency, we kind of took them out of the comfort zone and say, hey, how about we play this kind? Let's play some long drones for like 10-20 minutes, and for them was like really interesting. And there was another part, for example, me and Milan, we were thinking about doing this kind of moment in the show from the free jazz traditions, and we were telling them like, hey, you can just play whatever you want, but like nothing rhythmical, nothing. And it went really interesting to them to discover like how we approach music. So yeah.
Any more question?
Thank you for your work and for the presentations. I have a question about present-day artworks, present-day music. So, from your point of view, what plays a key role in representing traditional work in the present day fully, and so it opens up its full potential, and so it's alive and tunes you in with the roots, with the tradition? The reason why I'm asking this question is I think a lot of artists play around with the notion of having tradition in their work, but oftentimes the art pieces themselves are more of a reference link to the tradition. They inspire you to dig into the tradition itself, but don't have the fact. So I'm just curious about what you think about that.
Yeah, who wants to answer?
I'll take that. Thank you. That's a very interesting question. The fact that we're talking about it, we already are propagating in a huge room of people. Even if it is in an electronic world, even if it is to sample one of the classical traditional instruments or a piece or standard a repertoire from that style of music, even if it's talked about or sampled in a kind of a dance floor tune or a background for an art installation or wherever, it already finds its new home in a new shape and new form. It already gives people a little, a substrate for pondering upon where it comes from. And as also a dance music producer, you always are looking for new timbres and tones and new samples. You get out on the field recording trips to just collect things. You're bored of the same 808 and 909 kick drums and hats, and because how much can you change them? And 95+% of the music is written and still being written. So it's interesting to even at least have a small slice, 4 seconds, 2 seconds, 10 seconds, or a piece of some standard, but that way you're able to at least talk about it. It's not being buried in all the great new stuff. I mean, it's good to have new things every 10 years, every changing cycle, how music changes every 5-10 years and new styles come across. It's good to embrace new, pay way for them, but also if there is a background to it, because it's nice to just still ruminate on what is the progenitor for all of it, and none of that will ever, I guess, change, because from my philosophy of understanding of music, usually they say pretty much all the music is already written and it's already done, but there are new shapes and forms, and this sort of new shapes and forms with reference to old is great. This dialogue must continue, and I think people should keep using that. Thank you.
You want to add, Dragoș or Nilufer? You don't have to, of course. Okay, any more questions? Yes, please.
Thank you so much for your presentations. It was wonderful and very interesting. I've got 2 small but unfortunately not so simple questions, or maybe it's even one question just divided by 2. So the first, I think, goes directly to Dragoș, because you were mentioning during the presentation a couple of terms, which would be really nice if you could elaborate. So first of all, there was the anti-colonial matrix of power, which, as I understand, is like the reverse idea of colonial matrix of power by Mignolo and other researchers. So what role does it play in your research? This idea, what is it, and which role does it play? And second is the second term is the anthropology of sound, which I personally find very problematic, because we talk about sound as something not non-human, whatever, but there's always the word anthropology that requires this root anthropos, right? So there's always a person. So this is the first more would you help to elaborate, and the second is for the 4 of you. This is very simple. Where do you draw the line between traditional music and jazz music, and ethnomusicology and musicology? So where is this line? Thank you so much.
Yeah, I actually didn't have enough time to talk a bit about the anthropology of sound. As I discovered it through a handbook edited by a Danish musicologist called Holger Schulze, anthropology of sound, like usually anthropology is related to its colonial past, of course. So an anthropology of sound is outside the anthrocolonial matrix of power, and this means that you acknowledge the past that it represents, but it's also is not specific focused on text and on visual. So through sound, following sound, you can try to produce a different kind of knowledge which has the same epistemological let's say force as with text and numbers and so usually an anthropology of sound is also an anthropology of the senses, because we listened with our whole body, not just with the ears. There may be a difference that we should acknowledge from hearing and listening. First one is capacity that any being has, the hearing, but the listening involves a lot of sensibilities and involves many other different things. Instead of hearing, it involves a lot of attention and perseverance in trying not to be biased of what you hear and trying not to go into this trap of fetishizing the sound itself. And it also it pays attention to space and time, and yeah, I would say it's a new and very exciting discipline, like the anthropology of sound.
Yeah, and the second question, I think, was to all of us, right? How would we make it a division between traditional music and jazz, for example? Also, maybe I can answer to the second part of the question. Just music. Thank you for clarification.
No jazz.
I was wondering actually. So just music and thank you. So this would be the first. The second is ethnomusicology and musicology. Maybe I can answer to this as I understand it as a musicologist. For me, it's only a question of methodology. So ethnomusicology is based on fieldwork and on all of these kind of methods that you have. For example, I'm a historical musicologist, so I work on sources. But of course, you could also be like, in Germany, you call it systematic musicologist. It doesn't really make sense, but like measuring brain waves or stuff like that. So, but this is only like, of course, a very, schematic separation, also like from a tradition, again, of science or humanities in Germany. But that would be my very rough definition. So musicology is an umbrella term, and ethnomusicology would be a part of it, of course. But the other question, of course, I would love to hand it over to you again, but also the other one, of course. But how to divide between traditional music and just music? And anyone wants to answer to that?
I'm not sure if it can be divided, because traditional music is also just music. And I mean, I first thought that the question was related to jazz music, and jazz music also has a tradition in itself, the free jazz and the free improvisation, and but maybe like if we need to separate the two of them, because we Europeans love dichotomies, I would say that traditional music deals with a certain kind of past, and just music might be like something closer to contemporary. I don't know if it makes sense.
Nilufer has also an answer.
I do music just for fun, and I have zero musical education. But my answer is if suddenly a person of particular culture hears this music first time since childhood or something, and suddenly something eerie pops up in their like mind or body, if they start kind of vibing with the music, then that means it's traditional. Like, I don't know, like somehow I feel like traditional music is something that we perceive as children, like very deep in the car of the parents. They're blasting these tunes outside. There's nothing resembling this culture. And this is something that we kind of embody, like some sort of like super deep level. And if we isolate from it from a long time, and then we come back to it, if it resonates, then maybe it's traditional music, like very empirical kind of approach. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have time for one last question, if there is one. Oh, now it's really hard for me to decide. We have three. Sorry, I saw you as first, so please go ahead.
Hello. Hello. Great. Firstly, thank you so much for sharing your research and some of what you've been working on. It's been really inspiring to hear and listen to and watch. So I wanted to say thank you first. Yeah, I had a question about frictions. I had a friend once propose this idea of cultural approximation versus cultural appropriation, which I think is kind of a funny and sweet kind of bridging trick across that. And I know that there's other artists I know. There's an artist, Khayyam Alami, who proposed that he makes makamic music as opposed to music with Turkish makams. And then there's also this idea of one making like gamelanic music as opposed to music with gamelan, or even like Asian music, whatever that might be. So my question is, are there any frictions you've encountered in your own work, working with heritage or working with the past, and how you've kind of bridged that or kind of worked with that? Because I know that can sometimes be a bit of a tricky space to be in with this kind of binary thinking, which seems to try to be put on us often.
Oh, very interesting question. As a practitioner in that sort of like world where there is like a very thin line between, whether it's right or wrong or what are you doing, and I think it's the true motive that matters, and there will be people who are going to be just talking. I mean, yes, of course, every discourse is important, but as a practitioner with the sanctity of your practice, if you're able to evoke that emotion and you present your cultural work to the rest of the world, just because you have the background and the ability to propagate it, I think that's more empowering. And I, as a practitioner, also many times come across where people talk about like, you're using your traditional music to sort of, I think there is the sanctity in when you sort of approach it, and in these times when everything is just 30 seconds, 40 seconds, like the people are fast moving, and like I consider myself like old school in many ways. So I think that it's important for the practitioner to not to get bogged down by that kind of discourse, but also focus on the positives and take it from your own sanctity of the practice. And the takeaway is that you are actually, like you spoke about the gamelan music, which is really very interesting. And I think that just because somebody's working in that and trying to like put it in the contemporarized manner and more consumable for everybody from this generation or this time, doesn't make that person wrong in any way. It's definitely a good thing to do, to be able to share. I mean, what is the music for if you can't share? And there are too many discourses around like do's and don'ts. And I think if you have a clean approach and if you have a clean motive behind it, nothing can challenge that. And I think it's beauty of the music is to share and experience together and learn from each other, and that's community, and that's what music is for actually. So yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Shri. We have to finish the module, unfortunately. It was really a huge pleasure to have you here and to hear your presentations. Thank you very much again, all three of you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.